Hey guys, so I am working on an RPG with a couple of friends, and the first thing we got to build was a dialogue editor, which I know could be very stressful in Unity. So here is what we did.
So guys, this is the final version of our dialog node. So in our dialog node we can create dialogues that are connected and linked to quests and global events. So for example here we have an if quest node, we can select a quest and then we have dialog options for the quest if not started, is in progress, can be completed, or the quest is completed. We have as well options, so an NPC can offer like different or several options to a player, and the player will actually choose what to do. The other thing is that our dialogues, they will have events. So for example, if the quest is not started, we'll show this message, and then on dialogue end we'll start the quest. We have a creator here where we can have different events. We have an open shop, a quest, register event. We have a start condition, so if an event, if a quest, and we have normal dialogues or options node. So this is at the moment all the nodes we have. Then here at the top, every message here is actually localized, so we have the NPC name and the message that I can switch the language here and it will go blank because I haven't put anything in it, and then you can go back to English and you'll have the English. And whenever you save, it will save everything and serialize it into the main object.
So we start by deleting all we have inside the Unity project. After we have an empty project, we can create a script folder. Inside the script folder, we create an editor folder where we can create all our editor scripts. We'll now create our first C# script, which will be for the base graph item. The graph item will be a scriptable object, and it will contain two lists of data. The first list will be containing the data about the links about the nodes, and the second one will contain the data about the nodes. To tell Unity to serialize these two classes, we'll need to mark them as serializable. Let's now create a base node. Every node we create will be derived from this class later on. This class will derive from the node that is found in the experimental package of the Unity UI elements. The base node will contain a GUID, which will be used to identify the node inside the graph. Let's add now a constructor for it as well. Inside the constructor, we'll add the style sheet for the node. We also add a USS class for it. Let's now create a resource folder and then copy the styles in it. If we open the Unity style sheet, we can see that it's like a CSS normal style sheet, but some values will be different, like for example the dot in front of node would mean a class, but the hash, it's not an ID but it's a name. In the basic node now, we'll add some method to add ports to it. The direction of the port is input or output, while the port capacity, it means if you can connect and link one or multiple nodes through this port. The instantiate node method is provided by the superclass and will be used here. The type of the port is used to identify ports that can be connected with each other. Using this new method, we'll now create a create input port and a create output port. Now that we have our basic node, we can create the editor window that will host our graph. So let's create a new class, and we call it the Dialog graph, and we'll extend this from editor window. On-enable and on-disable are the main entry points for any Unity UI elements editor window. So let's create them. Let's create our base class that will host our dialogues. We create a new class called Dialog, and we'll extend this from graph item. This class won't contain anything, but it will be marked as create asset menu. You can choose the menu name you prefer. I'm going with Dagan and then Dialog. Our editor window will then keep a reference to the current dialog. In the onEnable, we then stub the construct graph view method and the generate toolbar method. Let's start with the toolbar. We create a toolbar from the UI elements, and then we simply add the not save button to it. The toolbar is then added to the main root visual element of the window. Let's now create a reference to our graph view. We'll call it the Dialog graph view, and we'll create a class for it in a second. The class for the Dialog graph view will extend from the base graph view from the experimental UI elements. For now, we'll leave this class empty, and we'll go back to the construct graph view method. In here, we just create a new instance of that class, and then we assign it to the root visual element. It's always important to clean up, so in the onDisable, we remove the graph view from the visual element of the editor window. Now we have the window, but it doesn't open yet. So we'll create a static method, and we'll decorate with the onOpenAsset from the Unity editor. This attribute will basically call this method every time you double click on an asset in Unity. We need to basically get the dialog, and then return true if it's a dialog, and return false if it's not. Let's now create a dialog graph view. So in here we create a constructor, and in it we add the style sheet for the base view. We then call the setup zoom from the base class. And then we add several manipulators to the class. And then we create a classic grid background that is common to every node editor. If we now go back to the editor, we can now create a dialog, and we can double click on it to open the dialog window. This is where part 1 ends. If you like this video, please hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in part 2.